Okay guys, here we are at the field with the Florian 250. I've got it all set up, and now we can do our flight test and our field test and all of our modes as well. So I'm going to set this down and go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn on the run cam, and I'm going to press record. Should see it flashing. I've also got my goggles over here. Make sure those are facing away from the sun. Those are also recording, just to make sure we get some flight video here. And I've got my monitor here. I can see my first person view. So I'll go ahead and arm, and I'll come up in that first mode. Here we go. Stick down to the bottom right, and I'll take off. Okay, so my props were on correctly. So now I should have full stability. If I push the stick to the right and left, it should recover and stabilize. And I'll tell you what, that LED on the back is really nice in broad daylight. You can see that clear as day. Very nice. It has 7 different color modes you can change on that as well. Let's go ahead and do a punch out real quick. Not bad. You've got, I believe there were 2204 motors on this one, so fairly relevant to what we're racing with right now. And those LEDs in the front are really easy to see, guys. So it gives you nice orientation front and back with this quad. You can take a little selfie. Now it does have 20 amp ESCs on here, and you can go 2 to 4S. Start out on 3S, like I always say for the new guys. Fly it kind of mild and learn your modes. Learn how to fly first on 3S. Much more mild. Now, like I said before, this is definitely a quad for beginners to intermediate. This is something you want to start out with and then move up to a more aggressive quad, because this one's totally capable of racing and just sport flying. If you want to just have fun, if you don't want to really do local races in your local chapter, you can really cruise with this quad. It's really nice. The nicest thing is that it is updatable with CleanFlight with your Naze 32 board on there. So I'm going to go ahead and switch down now into my horizon mode, and now that'll let me have a little more tilt left and right, as well as flips. So if I want to flip all the way around, I can, and it's going to sort of give me a little bit of stabilization, not as much. But if I'm racing, this is not going to hold me back as much. I can really get going fast. Really enjoying that rear LED in the broad daylight. Super cool, easy to see. Now line of sight, if you're practicing line of sight, horizontal is going to be a little harder to fly. And if you go all the way to the edge of the stick, you're going to do a flip. Really nice forward flip, back flip. And I'll come around and come back a little closer to us. So let's go ahead and switch into acro mode. Okay, now I'm in acro mode. So now I have no stabilization. And when I push the stick right, left, my right stick, right, left, forward, and back, it's going to continue in that same trajectory. So you really got to be on the sticks when you're flying in acro, guys. Practice that on the simulator first before you start flying outside line of sight. Oh, there we go. We're going to do a durability test and see how well this thing crashes. Okay, so here I am at the crash site. First thing you want to do is inspect the area to make sure that if any of the parts flew off the quad, that they're in close proximity, and you don't walk away from your crash site first. Don't pick up your quad and just walk away. You want to make sure everything is on here first. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make sure the arm is disarmed on the quad. Now it's not going to spool up on me or do anything. I'm going to go ahead and unplug the quad. And everything looks like it's here in close proximity. I didn't even break a prop, so this is a nice durability test on this quad. The LED bar is still back here intact. I didn't even bend a prop, and that was a pretty good slam dunk there, you guys. I went in head first. I did hit camera first, so I'll clean the camera off real quick before our next flight. So we'll go ahead and continue that flight test. Nice durability test though. It survived really, really nice. I didn't even hurt an arm. So this is a pretty tough quad. Okay guys, I have everything turned back on. I checked all my props. Everything is good to go. I did lose that little piece of foam that was underneath my run cam, so I'm gonna have more of a flat angle now. Sorry about that, but the good thing is that I did show you a durability test, and this thing really held up in that forward tumble. Even the pro pilots lose their orientation sometimes when you're flying acro in line of sight. A little bit difficult. I always had problems with nose in flying. Everything is reversed on the switches on your sticks, so keep that in mind, that when you're facing in toward you, everything is going to be opposite on your sticks. So something to practice on the simulator, not so much out in the field. But I'm going to go ahead and take off in angle mode again. So I'll go ahead and stick down to the bottom right and take off. And I've got my DVR recording on my Fat Sharks. All right, let's continue this flight demo. I really like those headlights up in the front. That helps me a lot. It didn't help me earlier in that crash, but I could see that it was headed toward me. I just pressed the stick in the wrong direction and bam, slam dunked it. Motors, ESCs, everything's fine. The frame totally survived that little crash. Not a big deal. Got full throttle out. Nice. And you can fly, like I said, you can fly 4S on this. You can also put 50-45 tri-props on there if you want a little more boost. It's going to drain your battery faster, but you'll have more punch out. If you want to fly this one freestyle in acro and FPV, you can do that. Start out with your monitor first, like I always tell the new guys. Learn how to fly with the monitor, FPV first, then move up to the goggles. Very important to learn how to fly line of sight first. Not a bad quad though, guys, especially for one that you can tune, you can PID tune. The default PIDs that are set on this right out of the box, I don't see any wobble on the copter. It does need some tuning for sure. Some of the hard turns. I'm back in acro again. I got a little far away from me last time. I usually don't fly in acro too long, because you see how much tilt I get there. I got no stabilization. I can practice my flips. And I can keep the rear facing me this time a little bit, and that way I can keep my orientation. Just punch out, do a flip real quick, doing a flip to the left, do a forward flip, do a back flip. Nice. So I am in air mode right now in this acro phase. I'm gonna switch back into angle mode for a second so I can talk without crashing. Kind of hard to talk and fly at the same time. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing with the sticks when I'm talking to somebody. So this has been a great demo because I've been able to show you just a little bit of everything with this quad. Really nice. I'm going to show you also how to do the firmware update on here so you can get it updated to the latest and greatest firmware. I haven't seen a lot of videos out there to do that on this particular quad, so we're also going to show you prop orientation, how to put your props on correctly, and how to do a bootloader pin. If you don't know about a bootloader pin, you're going to need to know that on this quad. Video reception is really nice with that cloverleaf antenna on the top. You can upgrade that to an Amway or something a little nicer like a Immersion RC cloverleaf. But any old cloverleaf will do when you're just starting out, no big deal. Because you guys are going to be flying this pretty close in. Don't worry about long distance flying with this or flying at long range. Racing is all about close proximity. Flying it in a smaller field. If you have a big field, that's cool if you're FPVing. Just make sure you have your fail-safe set up. So our battery's dying and I went ahead and set it down. So that's it for this flight review. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the goggles recording there. I'm gonna walk over and pick up the quad. So now we're gonna go back to the studio and I'm gonna show you some setup on this about the firmware, the props, and we're gonna show you how to make a bootloader pin. So we'll see you back in the studio. Thanks for hanging out at the field, guys. So before we get started with that software update, I've got to show you guys how to put the props on. If you're new to this, this is definitely some information that you need to know. And this little tip will actually help you when you go to put the props on later. Or if you break a prop out in the field and you need to put a new one on, if you break a couple, and this will give you sort of a guide as how to remember which prop goes where on a multi-rotor, on a quadcopter specifically. So you're going to take your first prop, and that one's going to be a right turn prop. If you look on the front of the prop, there should be a series of numbers here and an R at the end. That's going to tell you that this one rotates to the right. So the first prop that you put on your quad is always going to be the right rear prop. So that one always goes clockwise to the right. Now the next prop over is going to be your front left prop, and you'll also need an R prop there as well. So look in the series of numbers, look for that R, and you'll see that as it turns, the leading edge of that prop will be the prop side that's facing upwards. So as it turns, it will create lift. Now that one's on the right turn as well, and that's a clockwise motor there, turning prop. Now we'll do the front right prop. Now we're going to look for a prop that goes counterclockwise. So if you look on that series of numbers there, you see 5 by 4.5. You don't see any R on the end of that one, so that one actually is going to rotate to the left. Okay? Now grab another prop. We're going to do the left side and the rear. We're going to look on this prop, and that has an R on it, so that's not the prop we need. Now let's look at the numbers on here. Okay, that one doesn't have an R on it, so that's a left turn prop. We see the leading edge is going to be facing the direction that it's turning. So now we have the props on correctly. If you don't have the props on correctly when you go out in the field to do this, for the first time you power up, it's either going to sit there on the ground and not lift off, or it's going to flip over and violently crash. So very important that you have your props on there correctly. Hopefully this little tip, knowing that this back right motor normally will turn to the right. You can double check this setup inside CleanFlight in the configuration section. So it'll show you motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4, and which direction the motors turn. So right rear always, back right rear always goes to the right. So start there, and the one on the opposite side will turn the same direction. Same as here, they both go left. So that's the way the Florian 250 is set up. Now we'll go ahead and do the firmware update now. Okay guys, as a bonus for this video, I'm going to show you how to update your firmware on your Florian 250. Now this is great because we do have a Naze 32 on here. This is an Afroflight Naze 32. The firmware on here is from 2015, so if you want to update that to the latest revision, follow these steps. First thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to activate the bootloader on this board. So to get to the firmware flasher screen in CleanFlight, go over here on the left of the CleanFlight software, and you'll need to select Naze 32 as your board here in this list. It says 1.13, so 1.13, and that's a stable version. We'll just zoom in real quick there for you so you can see that. Make sure you have that selected. Now, when you plug in your USB cable to the side of your board, you want to make sure that you short out the bootloader pins. So what are the bootloader pins? Those are these two little silver tabs right here. Those two need to be connected somehow and essentially shorted out. And when you do that, the firmware bootloader will be activated here at the bottom of your screen. When you load firmware online here, we can go ahead and basically have an internet connection. You push that. Now when it loads up, that screen will drop down like you just saw there. We haven't started the process yet. I can set that to auto connect up top here. And now when we plug in the USB cable here, and I have my bootloader pins shorted out, you will automatically connect and start the firmware process of updating. So the way you need to do this is, once you have that set to auto connect, you've loaded your firmware here, you're at this screen, you can scroll down to the bottom there, and you can see loaded online firmware there. You're going to take this little pin here. I have made up this little pin, and I put a little, it's just two little pins extra pins that I had laying around, and I soldered both of those pins together at the top, and then essentially the two bottom pins are going to make contact with these two silver ones here. Now I'll hold that there when I plug in my USB, and I will start the firmware updating process. That's kind of how you have to do it in order for this to work. Now, some of the newer boards have a button, a bootloader button, but this one doesn't. So this is the way you have to do this. Don't get too scared about taking the top off. It's only 8 screws that you have to remove to take your top off. Set your little spacers that come out from the top of your arms over to the side. There's only 4 spacers there. Your bolts will have to go back through to put your top on again. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to set the camera down for a second, and I'm going to put my bootloader pin on and start that process, and I'll show you how that process begins. So now I'm pressing down my bootloader pin on top of the bootloader tabs, and that should put the board into bootloader mode. And I have it set up in CleanFlight to go ahead and auto flash. So when I plug in my USB cord, if I can do this in Harmony, everything will start updating automatically. So as long as I don't mess up that. Now you can see over here the green progress bar is moving over, so it is flashing the latest update of Naze 32. Now I'm going to have a June 2016 version of firmware on here, so very nice. We're updating and we're verified, and that is all happening perfectly. First try. So as we get verified, we can restart in CleanFlight, and I'll show you how to set up your modes for air mode and some other stuff in here on your radio, because your radio is really programmable, and I'll walk you through that. So now we're good, we're successful. On to the next step. Okay guys, so now that we have the most updated version of the firmware on the board, and I showed you what a bootloader pin is, and you just put a little solder on those 2 pins at the very top to connect those, and that way we can create a short on those 2 bootloader tabs. Very important that you do that, and you touch these 2 to the tabs. It seems kind of weird to do that, but that's the way you have to do it with these types of boards. There are other boards out there that have a little push button for the bootloader tab. That's very, very nice. Those are some of the newer boards. This is an older board that we're working with here. So now it is updated to a 2016 firmware, and we can go ahead and connect the USB cable to the side of the copter or to the flight controller, and then plug it into the side of your computer. And if you have auto connect on, it should automatically load. And I can check my orientation here, right, left, forward, and back. All looks good. So I'm going to go down to the CLI at the very bottom down here, and I'm just going to type in version on this bottom command line here. And when I hit return, it'll show me that I'm running the latest CleanFlight on here, Naze 113, and it's June 6, 2016 here. So we're good to go there. We have the latest version. Now we have a lot more options on our flight controller than we previously did with a 2015 firmware. So I'm going to go up here, back here to setup, and everything is looking good here. I am on a flat and level surface. If you want to recalibrate your accelerometer, you can do that here if it's flying a little strange, but we don't need to do anything with that right now. Now ports, those are all okay. This is where you're going to activate what receiver and where it is on the board. Everything is good there because it's been pre-configured. Go down to configuration, the next one down, and I'll try to move this out a little bit so you can see here what I'm doing. Now in the configuration settings, over here on the right we have one-shot motor stop and all that good stuff. Just leave that the way it is here. Scroll down and look at the rest of this. The VVAT is fine. Receiver mode over here, that's all fine, that's good. If you use a different receiver on here, if you decided to put that on there, you can change it to S-Bus or PPM RX inputs. Using Spectrum or Futaba, you can also do that. Everything down here is off. When I first loaded it up earlier just to check it, it had black box on. I turned black box off because I'm not going to use black box with this. I'm not going to get too into it's just for looking at your data from your flights. So
Failsafe, big changes on the failsafe screen. That other screen that we saw didn't have any of this cool stuff on here. So stage 2 settings on the right hand side, this is where you want to set up your failsafe for your Florian 250. Make sure if you do your set to drop, that is probably the safest thing to do, that I like to do when I'm flying around urban areas. I don't want it to fly at all if I lose radio communication with the copter. So I want it to drop to the ground because I want to be able to walk over and pick it up. I don't want to have to go across town and get it. If it has a flyaway, that's what could happen. You don't want that to happen. So I put it on drop. I had an instance before, years ago, where a flight controller got stuck in its last previous known throttle position. Now, if you don't have failsafe set up, that's exactly what the Naze will do. It'll remember the last known throttle position, and then it'll keep flying. If it's on 75% throttle, that's where it's going to stick when you lose communication. So make sure that you have this set up. Very important. I have mine set up to drop. Other people prefer to do this land option. You can set your throttle value to 1,000 there. That's totally fine. And then it'll come down on a slow hover and land on the ground, hopefully. So I don't trust that, so I do a drop. But that's just me, totally me. So PID tuning, I'm going to leave all these defaults the same. Over here, I did change to 75, 75, and 75. So I get a faster roll and pitch rate. So I'm going to have a little more nimble of a copter setup. If you're a beginner, you can leave those all on 0, 0, 0 here on the rates. That way you'll have a big loop when you go to do a roll. You want to make sure you're way up in the air when you do those rolls. And also sort of a softer feeling controlled copter if you're new. Now we'll go down to the receiver. I can turn on the radio real quick for you. And we can get going on this radio setup. Now my yaw is good, my throttle is good. And you can check all of your channels on your radio here. Pitch is good, forwards and backwards. Everything looks good here. And my mode switch is on auxiliary 2. So now I'm going to show you how to set up your modes. Now you go down to the modes tab. You see nothing is selected here. We don't have anything on. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for you. I'm going to plug in the battery. Now we have the battery plugged into the copter and the radio's on, and I'm connected to the computer. So I'm going to leave the arm set up the way it is, the throttle down and to the right. I'd probably change that to an arm switch later, and you can do that with this. You can add it to a particular switch on the radio. Now I'm going to set my angle mode, my horizon, and I'm going to add air mode at the very bottom. And you click add range on these, and you'll see these slider bars here. What is that? That is where your values are going to be at that switch position. So first one is going to be angle mode, and right now it's on aux 1, so there's a little green dot here, and when I change my channel on my switch, you see that doesn't move, it stays right there. So I need to activate auxiliary 2 because that's what that switch is set to. And on air mode I need it to be on aux 2. And I move that slider over a little bit here. Now when I go to the second position with my switch, I see it's right there, so I'm going to take these sliders and move them in nice and tight from 1400 to 1600. And now I'll go down to air mode, and that'll be on my last position. So see that green dot moved over here. Now I need to take this slider, and the slider is pretty much going to be when that mode is active. So I'm going to move that over and make that in pretty tight there as well. So now I have all my modes set up. So I have angle mode here, you can see the green dot, and then it moves over to here for horizon. And then lastly is air mode all the way at the end. So you notice that these two don't light up. That's because we haven't saved yet. Go to the bottom right hand and save that. Now it shows green here, we're in angle mode. Now you go down to horizon, the next switch, and then if we go all the way down, we should be in air mode, so we're good there. Now I've saved those settings and everything is good. We have modes set up on our transmitter, so very, very nice. You don't need to do anything in the adjustments screen. Once you have your modes set up, you're pretty much good to go, folks. And we talked about PID tuning a little bit, and your roll rates and pitch rate and yaw rate. start with your rates first. Don't play around with your PID tuning too much, because you could have your copter flying really, really screwy. So until you learn how to PID tune, watch those videos on that and learn that. All of us are learning it. It is a work in progress. So this should help you, hopefully, get your Florian 250 set up with your modes, and get air mode activated on there as well. So very nice. And remember, guys, with your failsafe, bench test that always. So I'm going to go ahead and bench test mine now. I'm going to move the camera over here so you can see the Florian 250. So I'm going to go ahead and arm the motors. Now I'm going to turn the transmitter off. Now if this is set up correctly, your motors will stop spinning just like that, and the radio is off. So now I can turn the radio back on. Okay, make sure your switches are all up, and now I should have control of the copter again. So, and to disarm, it's throttle stick to the bottom left and hold it. So very nice, guys. Thanks again for watching this video, and hopefully this little bonus section helped you guys set up your Florian 250 with CleanFlight and your fail safes and all of that good stuff. So thanks again for watching. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one.
Hey guys, thanks again for watching that episode. Please do click subscribe so you can see all the newest drones coming out each week on the Drone Camps channel. We're going to show you tons of new stuff coming out in the drone industry. I'm Justin Davis from Drone Camps. Thanks again. I'll see you on the next one.